Welcome to Learn English with Tech Leads with your hosts, Marcus and Sarah. Deconstructing world-class software architecture and engineering culture so you can master professional tech English. Let's dive in.
Imagine you are a senior engineering manager. It is exactly 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah. And you have exactly 45 minutes to align a team of 8 engineers. 3 of those engineers are sitting in a meeting room in San Francisco. One is working remotely from Austin, Texas.
Right. A very typical distributed team.
Exactly. And you, sitting right where you are, need to decide exactly what software features this team will deliver in the next 14 days.
Wow. Just picturing that scenario creates a little bit of stress for me. Managing a distributed technical team is a huge challenge in any language.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're dealing with different personalities, technical arguments, and strict deadlines.
Sprint planning is hard enough when you are speaking your native language, but when you are operating in English, it is a completely different challenge.
It really is.
Native-speaking engineers often speak incredibly fast. They mix complex, agile terminology with casual, everyday slang. And, well, very often, in a heated technical debate, they do not wait for you to finish your sentences.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Because of this dynamic, your margin for error is very small.
Wait, I want to pause and highlight that phrase you just used, margin for error.
Oh, sure.
When we talk about a margin for error, we mean the amount of mistakes you can make before a process breaks down or fails entirely.
That is a great definition.
So in a fast-paced 45-minute planning meeting with native English speakers, your margin for error is almost zero. You simply do not have the time to sit quietly and search your brain for the perfect vocabulary word.
Right, and that pressure is exactly why we are doing this deep dive into our sources today. Today, our mission is very specific.
We are definitely not looking at general business English today.
Exactly. We are not going to talk about how to write polite emails to human resources or how to give a formal slide presentation. We are exploring a highly specific skill set. We are exploring what the sources call operational English, or what you might call facilitation English.
And that is a crucial distinction for senior professionals. Descriptive English is about explaining a technical concept.
Right.
But operational English is about driving action. It is about moving groups of people toward a decision, closing down unhelpful debates, and assigning clear responsibility in real time.
Our source material for this deep dive highlights 14 critical, highly direct phrases. You need these phrases in your vocabulary tool belt to lead effectively.
Yes, you do.
And we are going to explore how to use them across 2 of the most important Agile meetings. First, the sprint planning meeting at the beginning of the week, and then the retrospective meeting at the end.
So let's start at the very beginning of the cycle. Before your team can write a single line of code, you have to survive sprint planning.
Very true.
And the primary goal here is clarity. Because before a team can do the work, they must agree on exactly what the work is.
Right.
And they must agree on how big the work is.
Which brings us to a phrase that completely changes the dynamic of a planning meeting. The phrase is, let's size this story before we commit.
This is an incredibly powerful piece of operational English. As an engineering manager, you understand the psychology of your team, right?
Oh, definitely.
Developers often suffer from blind optimism. When a new feature is presented, they want to please the product manager. They will immediately say, yes, we can build that.
Every single time.
Right. So this phrase redirects that energy. It stops the blind optimism in its tracks. It forces a realistic, grounded discussion. It shifts the entire focus of the room from, can we do it, to how much effort does this actually require?
I want to push back on the vocabulary there just a little bit, though.
Okay, go ahead.
For an English learner, why is it so important to use the word size? Why wouldn't a manager just say, let's estimate this story?
That is a really great question about nuance. In general, everyday English, the word estimate is perfectly fine.
Right.
But in agile software development culture, there's very subtle context. Sizing implies relative effort.
Ah, I see.
It is a way of asking how complex this task is compared to a previous task we have completed. It is not just about guessing exact hours on a clock. When you use the word size, you are signaling to the native speakers in the room that you deeply understand Agile culture.
That makes a lot of sense. You are speaking their specific cultural language.
Exactly.
Now, once the team is ready to size the work, there's another phrase from our source material that might save you more time than anything else. The phrase is, what are the acceptance criteria?
Yes. If you allow your team to commit to a ticket without explicit acceptance criteria, you're walking directly into a trap.
A huge trap.
Think about what happens on a Friday afternoon at the end of a sprint. A developer will look at their code and declare that a ticket is done.
Yeah.
But the quality assurance tester, the QA, will look at the exact same feature and say it is completely broken.
And then you have a 30-minute argument about what the word done actually means.
Exactly.
Asking what are the acceptance criteria on Monday morning completely prevents that Friday afternoon argument. It forces the product manager to define the finish line.
Right. It creates absolute clarity.
It ensures the QA tester knows exactly what specific behaviors to validate before the developers even start typing. But, of course, the planning process is not always smooth.
Never.
What happens when the team looks at a ticket and they start arguing during the sizing process? Like, maybe half the engineers in San Francisco think a database migration is a simple 2-day job, but your engineer in Austin thinks it will take 2 full weeks.
Well, when you see that level of disagreement, it means the task is just too ambiguous. You cannot force a commitment. You have to step in and tell the room, this needs to be broken down.
Yeah. When a project causes that much debate, you cannot just accept it as it is. You can't swallow the elephant, whole meaning. You cannot complete a massive project without splitting it into smaller, manageable pieces.
That is exactly right. When you say, this needs to be broken down, you are not rejecting the feature. You are not telling the product manager no.
Right, you are just delaying it safely.
You are simply converting that massive ticket into preparation work for the next sprint cycle. You are explicitly signaling that there is hidden ambiguity that the team has not resolved yet.
So the actionable takeaway for this first phase of the sprint is about establishing firm boundaries. Never allow your engineering team to commit to a ticket that lacks explicit acceptance criteria.
Absolutely.
And never let them commit to a task if they cannot agree on its size.
So the planning meeting is over. The sprint has officially started. The next major challenge for a technical leader is defending the sprint you just planned.
Defending is the perfect word for it.
You have to protect your engineers from external distractions and internal hidden traps.
Distractions are everywhere in a tech company. The CEO might drop into your chat application and ask for just one quick feature. Or a product manager might want to change a design midweek.
Right, the classic scope creep.
To stop this scope creep, you need a polite but incredibly firm phrase. You say, that's out of scope for this sprint.
Let's clearly define what out of scope means for our listeners. In project management, out of scope describes any work that is not included in the current agreed-upon plan.
Okay, good definition.
If your team agreed to build a secure login page, and suddenly someone asks you to build a user profile page as well, that new request is out of scope.
Right.
Using this phrase is the most professional way to move a drifting conversation out of your current sprint and back into the product backlog.
It is a shield for your team's focus. Now, closely related to managing scope is managing expectations.
Yes.
Sometimes you have a task that you really want to finish, but you are not completely sure you have the time. That is when you say, this is a stretch goal.
Let's pause on that one too.
Sure. A stretch goal is a bonus target. It is a goal that requires extra effort, and it goes beyond the minimum requirement for success.
Defining something explicitly as a stretch goal prevents a massive amount of confusion. It marks a specific software ticket as highly desirable but completely optional.
That is key.
The developers understand they will only work on this stretch goal if they finish the core, essential work early.
That is such a psychological relief for the team. It completely avoids that terrible end of sprint panic.
Oh, totally.
You avoid a situation where leadership is angry about a missed feature because everyone agreed on Monday that it was optional from the start.
Right.
So those phrases protect the team from outside distractions. But what about internal traps? What about the technical roadblocks that stop engineers from doing their jobs?
That is where you have to look ahead. You must ask, what are the dependencies? You use this phrase to surface blockers before they actually happen.
We have all seen this nightmare scenario. A front-end developer spends 3 days building a beautiful user interface, but they cannot launch it because they are waiting for the back-end authentication team to finish the security API.
It is the worst.
The whole sprint crashes because the teams were not aligned.
If you do not ask about dependencies during planning, you are guaranteeing that you will have a blocked engineer at your Wednesday morning stand-up meeting.
Exactly.
You must identify these cross-team connections before you commit to the work. And if you ask about dependencies and you sense danger, you have to use another phrase. You say, I'd flag this as a risk.
Let's talk about the context of risk in our source material. The text points out that engineering teams love to estimate based on the happy path.
Oh, they certainly do.
And they frequently fail to plan a fallback if, for example, a third-party payment system goes offline. So let's make sure these terms are perfectly clear.
Good idea.
The happy path is the absolute ideal scenario where absolutely nothing goes wrong. A fallback is your backup plan. It is exactly what your system will do when the happy path inevitably fails.
Saying I'd flag this as a risk is a brilliant facilitation move for a manager. You're taking the hidden uncertainty and naming it out loud for the whole room to hear.
And notice the professional tone. It does not sound aggressive. It does not say, we cannot do this.
Right, it is very neutral.
It is not a negative statement at all. It simply says, there is a specific variable that could go wrong here, and we need to keep it on our radar.
Which brings us to the actionable takeaway for managing scope. Use these specific phrases to name uncertainty loudly and clearly. You can protect your team's time and surface technical dangers without ever sounding negative or slowing down the team's momentum.
Okay, let's fast forward. We have survived the week. The sprint is finally over.
Phew.
It is Friday afternoon, and we have arrived at the retrospective meeting. The psychological challenge shifts entirely here. You are no longer planning for the future. You are analyzing the past.
Right.
And you have to do that without making the developers feel defensive.
Leading a retrospective without making people defensive is a true management art form. If you are not careful, a retrospective can easily turn into a toxic space where everyone just complains for an hour, or worse, where everyone sits in silence because they are afraid to speak.
Silence is definitely worse.
Psychological safety is your primary goal. How you open the meeting dictates the tone for the entire hour. That brings us to our next phrase. Let's start with what went well this sprint.
This is the crucial 30-second icebreaker. As the senior leader, you should probably answer it first.
Yeah, lead by example.
You might say, the automated deployment pipeline was noticeably faster this week. Starting with a small, positive technical win lowers everyone's heart rate. It makes it psychologically safe for the team to discuss the difficult, negative things later on.
Building on that positive momentum, when someone does excellent work, you need to use this specific phrase. You say, I want to call out the work on.
Let's define that. The phrasal verb call out has a very specific professional meaning here. In this context, to call out means to specifically highlight and praise someone's work publicly in front of their peers. Our source material gives a highly technical example of this. It suggests praising an engineer for catching a race condition. For those learning the vocabulary, a race condition is a complex technical error. It happens when software processes execute in the wrong, unpredictable order, which often causes a system crash.
So instead of saying a very basic, vague phrase like, good job, David, you use this operational phrase.
Right.
You say, I want to call out the work David did on Tuesday. He caught a database race condition in the staging environment before it became a massive production incident. That is specific, highly technical, public recognition.
The team will respect it, and David will certainly remember it.
Absolutely.
Praising good work builds up the team's armor, which is crucial, because eventually the retrospective has to confront the uncomfortable reality of what did not work.
We have to talk about the problems.
But again, language matters. You do not ask what broke. Instead, you use this phrase, what slowed us down.
Notice how different that feels from asking what went wrong or asking who made a mistake.
It is entirely different. It is like asking what is wrong with the engine versus asking why there are rocks in the road. That is to say, we are looking at the external processes that blocked us rather than blaming the engineers.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. Asking what slowed us down focuses the team's brain power on removable obstacles.
Right.
Maybe the problem was a badly written design document. Maybe it was a slow testing environment. It removes the personal blame.
Yeah.
But as a manager, when the team identifies these obstacles, you must listen very carefully. If you hear the exact same problem being mentioned sprint after sprint, you step in with this phrase, that's a recurring pattern.
That's a recurring pattern. This phrase is transformative. It takes a problem and moves it from being a one-time human accident into a structural, systemic issue that the team must fix.
Yes, exactly.
If your QA tester is receiving tickets with missing information for the third sprint in a row, it is not an accident anymore. It is a documented pattern of failure.
So, the actionable takeaway for the retrospective phase is all about preserving your team's morale. By directing the conversation toward removable obstacles and identifying recurring patterns, you demand constant improvement from your engineers, but you keep the environment entirely safe and supportive.
But even when a team feels completely safe and supported, a retrospective can still fall apart if you lose control of the room.
Oh, very easily.
This brings us to our final operational focus, flexing your facilitation muscle. You have to control the clock, and you have to force action.
It is very common for a retrospective to get hijacked. Two senior engineers might start arguing about the future of the database architecture, and suddenly 20 minutes have passed.
We have all been in that meeting.
As a manager, you must enforce time limits.
The single most important phrase for controlling the clock is this: let's time box this to 2 minutes.
Let's explain that term. When you time box a discussion, you are allocating a strict, fixed, maximum amount of time to that single topic. When the 2 minutes are up, the debate must stop, regardless of whether they have reached an agreement.
Without a time box, one passionate technical debate will consume your entire meeting. But let's look at the reality of that situation.
Okay.
What happens when the 2 minutes expire, the alarm goes off, and those two engineers are still passionately arguing about cloud infrastructure? You step in and use this phrase, let's take that offline.
To take that offline means to move a discussion outside of the current meeting. You use this phrase even if you are already on a remote video call.
Right.
It means you are parking the complex conversation so the rest of the group can move forward with the agenda.
You know, I have to admit, I want to push back on this one.
Why is that?
As a former developer, when a manager looks at me and says, let's take that offline, it can feel incredibly dismissive. It can feel like the manager is simply ignoring my very valid technical concern because it is inconvenient.
That is a very real danger, and it is a great point. But the source material provides clear guidance on how to use this phrase without insulting your team.
Okay, how do they suggest doing it?
The secret is validation. You cannot just cut them off mid-sentence. You have to validate their concern first. You say, let's take that offline. The database scaling issue is a highly valid topic, but it requires a detailed whiteboard conversation between you and the infrastructure team, not all 8 of us right now.
Wow.
You are not dismissing the topic, you are moving it to the correct venue.
That added context makes a huge difference. You protect the meeting's clock, but you respect the engineer's expertise.
Exactly.
Now, we reach the final moments of the meeting. The team has discussed what went well, they have identified the patterns that slowed them down, but, talking is not enough. You need concrete action before everyone disconnects.
Yes, you do.
That is where you use our final phrase, who owns this action item?
This phrase is non-negotiable for a manager. The source material states a powerful and frightening statistic. Without an explicit owner, 80% of retrospective action items never happen.
80%. That means almost all of your team's great ideas for improvement will just vanish. Why does that happen?
It is the bystander effect.
Right. It is basic human psychology. When you say, we really need to fix the deployment script, everyone in the room nods in agreement. But every single person assumes the engineer sitting next to them will actually do the work.
Exactly. You cannot accept vague promises. You cannot accept someone saying someone will look at the script next week. You must break that psychological illusion.
You have to be direct.
You must force a name and a date. You must turn a general observation into a firm individual commitment. Who owns this action item? I need a specific name.
And that is our final actionable takeaway. Never accept vague responsibility. Force a name and a deadline onto every single task to ensure your engineering team actually improves.
Let's synthesize everything we have explored today. We started with the intense pressure of a Monday morning planning meeting.
Right.
We explored how to demand clarity and protect the sprint with phrases like, let's size this story before we commit, and this needs to be broken down. We learned how to manage project scope by clearly defining stretch goals and identifying requests that are firmly out of scope.
Then we transitioned to the Friday retrospective. We discussed how to build a culture of psychological safety by starting with what went well and learning how to call out specific, excellent technical work.
That is so important.
We learned to look for recurring patterns that block the team without blaming individual developers. And finally, we flexed our facilitation muscle. We learned how to timebox endless debates, how to respectfully take technical arguments offline, and how to demand strict individual ownership of every action item.
Mastering professional English for software engineering is not just about memorizing a massive vocabulary list.
Well,
It's not about mastering every complex grammar rule either.
no, it is not.
It is about using these highly specific operational phrases. These phrases are tools. They guide your team's focus, they protect your calendar, and they assign clear responsibility in real time.
And that leaves us with a provocative thought, something for you to consider long after this deep dive ends.
I love a good takeaway thought.
By forcing yourself to rely on these highly structured, incredibly precise English phrases, do you actually become a more decisive and effective engineering leader overall?
That is a great question.
Regardless of whether you are speaking English, Spanish, or any other language, perhaps the strict limitations of operating in a second language actually force you to remove all the unnecessary words, making you a much clearer, much better manager.
That is a truly fascinating perspective to take into the workplace. Constraints can create excellence.
We highly encourage you to take these 14 phrases directly into your next Monday planning meeting. Write them down on a physical sticky note. Keep them right next to your computer camera.
That is a very practical tip.
You already have the elite technical skills. Now you have the operational English to match. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
That's a wrap. If this breakdown helped, hit subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss a lesson. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.